This episode is proudly supported by OpenTable.
Nearly 1/3 of diners are booking same day. So they're making those decisions on the spot. And 10% are making their bookings within just a few hours. And so it's why it's so important to have booking software like OpenTable, which allows your diners to discover you. And so when restaurants are on platforms like OpenTable, they're much more likely to be discovered. We help diners to connect to restaurants. Ultimately, having technology, using technology, helps you to reattach to those diners.
Experience the power of OpenTable. For an exclusive offer, visit restaurant.opentable.com.au/DITW. This episode of the Luminaries on Deep in the Weeds is proudly supported by Deputy, rostering and timesheets without the usual chaos.
People, when they think of our restaurants, they're thinking about quality food and a really good beverage offering and friendly and pretty relaxed, informal service. And now, as we sort of, as we grow, that is basically the DNA of our restaurant group. Are those features.
This is the Luminaries on the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The conversation on wine in Australia has changed exponentially over the last decade or so. It's not only changed the way we perceive great drinking experiences, but it's changed the dining experience too. Food and wine matches can, in the hands of the right people, become greater than the sum of their parts. How has that conversation evolved, and where is wine in the restaurant setting headed? Nick Hildebrandt is the co-owner of the Bentley Group. Nick, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You've been heavily influential in the direction that wine has gone in restaurant settings in Australia. How much has wine in restaurants changed over the last decade?
Oh, like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. When I was first starting my career, it was very different to what it is today. And it was, much more limited choice. And today is really, really different. It's been quite eye-opening, but different eras, different times, different winemaking, winemakers, influences, fashion. It's all combined to change it. And where we are today, I think it's great. Where we were 20 years ago when I first started, that was interesting as well. There was obviously wine was a lot cheaper then, a lot more bang for your buck, a lot better value, I guess. Whereas now it's it's becoming, wine is I guess it's always been like a commodity in a way. But now some wines, you're looking at $10,000 a bottle cost, and and it's some of those wines are becoming sort of for the elite, which is it has become a little bit elitist, which is that's not great to see. But I guess sort of going back all the way to the beginning, it was I guess wine has sort of always been a thing that sort of well-off people have drunk, like it or hate it, but that's the way it is. But there's no reason why we can't change that, and that's sort of the role of sommeliers and wine journalists and writers to open it up to different audiences and to give a greater variety of people a taste of wine and a love of wine, and not just make it for the sort of the rich and the powerful, because that's that's not how it should be.
One of the hallmarks of your career is the fact that you started conversations about wine for people. You opened up new doors for them. You sent them on new paths. What was it like in the early days of Bentley, when Brent was doing his sort of wild things in the kitchen and you were sort of presenting some pretty wild things in bottles in the front of house, trying to start that conversation? Do you have any stories from them?
Yeah, look, I guess we when we opened Bentley originally, the wine list was pretty alternate. It was, a lot of imported wines, which there was a bit of backlash towards, but it wasn't that we had a problem with Australian wines. It was just that there was a lot of interesting wines from overseas which we thought were good with the food and which we were inspired by, and they were a little bit left to centre, and that's, you know, how we always position Bentley. We want it to be an experience where you went into a restaurant, into a hospitality venue, and you could not get it anywhere else, and you could not get it at home. It couldn't be a dish that you could easily cook at home, and it couldn't be a wine that you could easily buy. You couldn't go up to your local vintage cellars and buy it. So we were trying to position ourselves as doing, modern, interesting food and wines to match. And it was the whole thing about hospitality and restaurants. It is an escape from your general life, isn't it? It's like going to a movie. When you're going into a restaurant, you're not necessarily trying to escape it. It's a different experience, and it's not one that you wouldn't normally have. So that was the reasoning, and we did have a lot of interesting, unusual wines. But like Brent with food, it was the wine for me, for my palate anyway, never got on the wine list unless it was delicious. And I think Brent had a similar philosophy with the food, and even if we know he's experimenting with gels and foams and all that molecular sort of carry on. As long as the dish tasted delicious and you could eat it, it didn't really matter. And that's always been my philosophy with wine. I don't particularly care who makes it, how it's made, where it's made, what the label looks like, what the closure looks like, as long as it's delicious and it has a bit of a story behind it, then I'm likely to buy it. And looking for wines that are delicious, but also sometimes they may challenge me. So back in the day, that was it was a lot of people. It was eye opening, but at the same time, I think we were on the sort of the cusp of a wave back then, especially with wine. And when we opened up Bentley, like the natural wine movement hadn't really started in Australia. It had been going in France and Europe for a while, and we were sort of one of the first early adopters to get what was termed natural wine into our wine lists. And we could feel that the whole movement was starting, and we were sort of a key player early on, and we sort of brought it into the mainstream. And that's that was sort of we felt like that was one of our roles to do that as well. So yeah, and now you look at where things are now, and that the wine list that we started with at Bentley's is fairly there's a lot of wine lists around town that sort of look very similar to that. But back in the day, we were the only one with a wine list which resembled anything like that. So it's come a long way. It really has.
Tell us about those early days. You were both really challenging people's perceptions in the realms, but Bentley was a really casual, accommodating space. It was very welcoming. There was no tablecloths. It was the start of something new for Sydney and Australia. What was the adversities of the early days of trying to get that across, but also be viable?
Yeah, it was. It was challenging. It was. We always said it was fine dining. It was a fine dining food and wine experience with fine dining service, but without all the fine dining bits and pieces you get, like tablecloths and the fussy service and the high prices to an extent as well. So it was interesting, because the other thing which was a challenge for us is we were in an old pub, and so some people were thinking it was a pub as well. They were coming in and going, "What is this food? And where is? Can I just get a schooner of VB? And can I go to Schnitty?" And it was like, "No, you can't have anything. Can't just have a drink? Can't you a bar?" And it took a while for us to get get our reputation, I guess, and for people to sort of understand what we were trying to achieve, because it was at the time it was pretty new for Sydney, and that the casual fine dining. But I think there were sort of a few other restaurants doing similar things at the time, and that sort of became the new normal, I guess.
The Bentley became the foundation for the many restaurants that you have now. Was there a key moment when you and Brent realised that you could build a group and build on the reputation that Bentley was receiving?
No, not really. It sort of came this. We've got 5 restaurants now, and it was pretty organic. I mean, we spoke in the early days about opening other venues, but Bentley was all encompassing and time consuming, and like every percentage of our energy and passion went into Bentley, and it gave us very little time to do anything else. So it actually did take us quite a while to open something else. We opened in 2006 Bentley, and then we opened Monopole in 2012. So it took us 6 years. And then Yellow not long after, and Cirrus not long after that. So, we're sort of 15 years old now, and we've got 5 restaurants. But it going back to the question, it was, it sort of feels easier now. Like to open the second restaurant was a big thing, and the third was a big thing, and now we sort of have a, the Bentley Group is like a brand, and it's a sort of foundation for us, and all the restaurants have a reputation, but they're all aligned to our group, and I would like to think that people think about it as people, when they think of our restaurants, they're thinking about quality food and a really good beverage offering, and friendly and pretty relaxed, informal service. So that's that, I guess that's the blueprint of what we've tried to achieve now. And now, as we sort of as we grow, that is basically the DNA of our restaurant group are those features.
Food and wine matching is something that the Bentley Group is renowned for, your ability to partner with the creativity of Brent Savage. Has there been any times when that's been really difficult to find the right wine to match with his food?
No, his food is, I think his food's pretty generous and pretty good to match with wine. It is not, I mean, there have been occasions with, back in the day, there was a anchovy dish, which you probably would remember. It was the white anchovy with pistachio praline. So you had, one of the most acidic, vinegary things you could ever, put in your mouth, and then you cover it in pistachios and a praline. So it's savoury, salty and sweet. That was probably challenging. That was the best thing of that was just a cold beer, and it was pretty simple. So it's not always Venice, and fortunately there's so many more options out there. Like back in the day when we first started, it was you're just trying to match it to wine, but now you can match it to beer, and there's some amazing sake being brought into the country, and there's non-alcoholic beverages and cocktails. So there really is no limitation, and you can match sort of any dish with anything really, and that's part of the fun with it. When we're generally speaking, when we trying to match a dish, a new dish with a new wine, we'll generally get the dish and we'll have 4 or 5 different options, not all of them wine, and then when we in our head we sort of think we know which one's going to work, and then quite often we're wrong, and so that's how you go about doing a match.
You mentioned that the second restaurant and the third restaurant were hard to open as you started to build the group. What were some of the failures and lessons that you learnt in the early days when you opened Monopole and Yellow?
I guess, once you go from being a small restaurant where it's owner operated, and growing to 2, 3, 4, you realise that you can't be there all of the time, which is back in the day at Bentley, myself and Brent were on every single service. So, if anything went wrong, it was completely down to us. But as we grew, you can't be there every service. So you have to empower managers and staff to run it for you. And essentially they become, the representatives of not only the company, but of yourselves. And so if you've got a rude waiter or a chef doing the wrong thing, it sort of becomes, it represents what you are. And so that back in the day, some of those things would happen, and it was, some of the challenges we had, we're not having, the right person at the right place. But the challenge really is about getting good people and empowering them and motivating them, and getting them to feel a sense of ownership of the business that they're operating when we're not there.
Has it been difficult for you to relinquish and let go and not be there all the time?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. In the early days, yeah, it was. You did have you wanted to be there, and you'd have a regular in there, but you were at another restaurant and so on and so forth. So, and I guess anyone who owns their own business is, to a degree, a bit of a control freak. So yeah, sometimes not everything went the way you want it to, but you just have to sort of let go of those emotions, I guess, and trust the people that you are working there are doing the right job, and ultimately you need to give people direction and motivate them, and if there is a problem, you need to address it and change it.
The Bentley Group is known for 5 very different offerings. Tell us about when you create a concept and create a new restaurant. Are you mindful to make sure it's nothing sort of like what you've done before, but still carries your DNA?
Yeah, like that. Yeah, the DNA is definitely critical. I think. We think that all of our restaurants in a way are similar, but they are, generally speaking, they are a different offering. So yeah, there is, when you're thinking of the concept, you're thinking of how it can be different to your other brands or other eateries, so to speak. And for us, I guess the main thing that we think of whenever we're starting a new business is basically, it's always about the location and the site. And that happened at Surry. We were offered a site on the water at Barangaroo, and we thought, okay, we'll do a seafood restaurant. You know what I mean? It just made sense. And then we moved Monopole. We saw a site for Monopole in the city, and we thought that would make an amazing, wine bar bistro. And it's like, well, that would be Monopole. And and then Yellow was a similar thing. We changed that to vegetarian and vegan, and Bentley, where it is now, it's in a sort of a historic Art Deco building, which is in the CBD, and we thought that we could elevate Bentley to a different experience in that site. So yeah, it comes down to a lot of it does come down to the site, and then you look at the market and see what you think the market would want, and also what you actually want to do as well. You know what I mean? Like, we could look at 1,000 different sites and go, wow, that would be a great chicken shop, or a great whatever. And it's like, well, we don't actually want to do that. So why would you bother? So yeah, there's a number of factors when it comes down to it, for sure.
This episode of the Luminaries on Deep in the Weeds is proudly supported by Deputy, helping managers and staff do their best work.
At Deputy, we're on a mission. We're on a mission to simplify shift work for every cafe, every restaurant, every bar. every business owner, every dishy, every waiter, every cook, every sous chef, this is the industry that will thrive with Deputy.
For more information, go to deputy.com. When was your first steps in hospitality? What sort of lured you to a career in it?
I guess I just, like so many other people, just fell into it. I was at university doing science, really didn't have much motivation for that. And I was working at the Basement, actually, at the time, which was the famous jazz club down in Circular Quay. And, you know, I was 18 and I started off as a kitchen hand, I think. Then I went to a glassy, then I was a bartender. And then that was basically it. And then the rest was sort of history. I did. I quit uni and I started doing hospitality management at the Hotel Intercontinental. And then I got placed into the Treasury, which was a Tony Bilson restaurant at the time. And you know, I was would have been like 19 and 20, and that was it. You know, there was obviously at the time there was a 3-hat restaurant, and you know, it was a massive wine culture within the restaurant. I met Andrew Gard there, who's a good mate and you know, a very influential wine importer and wine identity in Australia as well. And so we trained together, and basically, you know, I got the wine bug, and from there, the rest was history. I just went from restaurant to restaurant overseas to London for a little bit, worked for Marco, Pierre White and a few of those people, and came back to Sydney and worked for Mark Best for a few years, and then Brent and I met there, and then we opened Bentley. So it was nothing was really ever planned. It just sort of happened, and you know, I worked with some really great restaurateurs and chefs and sommeliers and a lot of influential people who helped me sort of shape my palate and the career.
Mark Best, Marco, Pierre White, Tony Bilson, all renowned chefs. Who's been the main influences on you and your craft?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have I was thinking about that the other day. I don't know if I have, like, if there would be one singular person or chef or sommelier or anybody who has had the biggest impact. I think it's just like it's a sum of all parts, and obviously, particularly restaurateurs, you know, influence you in a big way. But I think just a collective bunch of people has basically sort of shaped me to who I am today, and they're not even necessarily. You know, within the industry, you know, there's people from you know, family and friends and all sorts of, you know, other people influence who we are, and so I guess to answer, just basically sort of everybody I've sort of really ever worked for has influenced me.
Food and wine experiences can be greater than the sum of their parts. Has there been sort of key moments for you, food and wine experiences that have inspired you and you've carried into your career?
Like there have been definitely, absolutely, all the time, and that happens all the time from every day. And I wouldn't say there was one particular experience, one particular meal that I had, one particular tasting menu which had, you know, amazing wines. I think it's just a collective of different experiences. You know, I remember one time I had a I think it was a velouté or something like that, of a smoked salmon broth or something like that, and I was trying to pair it with a white wine, and I ended up trying just threw in a red Burgundy Pinot to see what happened, and that, you know, it just like worked unbelievably well, and that was like a revelation to me. And another time, we were at a restaurant and we were having a dish, and it was just like so overseas, and it was actually, the dish was awful, but but we had a white Bordeaux, and the saltiness and the white Bordeaux, it was just an absolute perfect match. And that was like a mistake which worked well. And often those sort of mistakes, you actually learn a lot from them. It's not necessarily about what works with things. It's not what not works with things. So I think you probably learn just as much out about what doesn't work with a particular dish, or when you're trying to match something, as to what you do when it actually matches perfectly. So yeah, little moments like that. But not. It wasn't a moment where I had Krug champagne and caviar and I thought, oh my God, the greatest match in the world. That kind of stuff. No, doesn't really happen. It could be a packet of Smith's crisps and a German Riesling. You know what I mean? Another one I like is blue cheese and beer. I think it's the greatest combination in the world. So yeah.
Technology influences everyone's day-to-day lives these days. What role does it play in the running of the Bentley Group?
Oh, it's huge. And going back to when we first started, the technology wasn't really there. The only technology we had was a computer and a point of sale, really. But now it's everywhere. Like from things like your musical playlist from Spotify, and you got your point of sale, which talks to you everything in your venue. It talks to your reservation system, and it talks to your bank, and everything seems to be linked. And in terms of technology, for when we first started Bentley, I don't think there wasn't even. Facebook may have just started, and you know what I mean, and there was no social media. It was all sort of any kind of review or anything like that was always published in print. And we remember when I was working at Mark Restaurant, we would wait if we had a review. We'd go to the pub, we'd go to the courthouse or Kinsellas and wait for the paper to come out at midnight, and that would be on Monday night. We'd get the review at midnight on Tuesday, and everybody used to do the same thing. And back in the day, if you got a good review, it would last be 12 weeks of solid bookings. And these days, you read your review online, basically the minute it's written, and if it's a great review, you might get 2 weeks of bookings out of it. And, social media and Instagram and Twitter and, things like that seem to have a bit more of an influence. Maybe not a bit more of an influence. I think the media and the written media and the online media still have a part to play, but it's there's a lot of influence around your Instagram handle and how that affects your business and so on. And it's changed an enormous degree.
It's been a really hard year and a half for the restaurant sector, but we're in a situation now where with high vaccination rates, society's going to open up again. What's some of the real sort of challenges that the Bentley Group is facing as it looks to open up again?
I think like everybody in our industry, the staff shortages is a real one. And, probably sounds a bit boring, but that's actually the truth. We're struggling to get staff for all our venues. And in fact, we can't really even open them as much as we would like to. So, they're all going to be sort of closed 2 days a week. And that's not because of us thinking that there isn't a market for them. It's just that we just don't have enough staff to cover the hours. And so the sooner we get our borders reopened and we get some international backpackers back into the country, the better, because we just don't have the people to staff hospitality, which is kind of sad, because it's I feel like I think people sort of the new generation of 20-year-olds are coming through, and they basically don't want to have a career in hospitality, and I think you can have a great career in hospitality, and I think that I know that a lot of people are trying to address that issue, but it's just it just seems to restaurateurs and people in our sector that quite often the younger generation are not really interested in this as a career path.
This pause that you've had leading up to opening, has that allowed you to look at the structure of the business differently, and will we see a different type of Bentley Group moving forward?
I think the first lockdown, we'd really, looked internally as to what was working and what wasn't working, what was relevant and what wasn't relevant. And it was such a shame when we closed down in June, because, we were really firing. All the restaurants are busy. We'd moved Monopole into the city. It was going really well. Yellow was really great. Bentley, we had, upped the ante a little bit. Everything was going along swimmingly, and then it all came to a grinding halt, and the lockdown went for a lot longer than everyone thought it would. So when we reopened, we've reopening with new menus. Obviously, when we were going into winter back in June, so now we're into sort of spring, summer's coming on. So the menu is a lot lighter, a lot fresher. There's pretty much 100% new menus across the board. All the wines by the glass are changing. We've been buying a bit of wine and so on. So the wine is still pretty robust. So no major changes at all. So, but we're looking forward to getting back there, and it feels like there's like a lot of energy within the staff, and everyone's itching to get back into it. So I feel like it's going to be a very busy sort of festive season, and then we'll see what happens next year. But I think hopefully we can keep on powering through.
You and Brent have spent over a decade working together. It's been an incredible combination. How do you work together? What are the different roles? Does someone look after the accounts and catering? Tell us how you work together.
So the structure of the business. So I guess we have a central office. We have 2 or 3 people doing accounts. We have an operations manager. We have a reservations manager. We have someone doing marketing. Then Brent has Aiden Stevens, who has been with us for over 10 years. He's the exec group chef, so he's Brent's right-hand man. And then we have, each of the restaurants have a restaurant manager, an assistant manager, and a sommelier. So there's a sort of a structure and a hierarchy. But generally speaking, myself and Brent, we're in the office. We're working with the accounts team and the operations manager and the exec chef, and we sort of that's the sort of the management team, and then everything sort of feeds into that, and we'll go and do services wherever we need to or have to, and then we sort of regroup and meet the office. We spend a lot of time all with each other, which is good. That's how it sort of runs.
Where do you see modern Australian dining? Your group has been integral in the shaping and direction of where contemporary Australian food has been heading for the last decade. Where do you see it right now and where it's going?
Look, I think it's great at the moment. I think it's I think there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of great talent within the industry. There's a lot of young chefs coming through. The borders have been shut, so you haven't been able to sort of go around and see what the rest of the world is doing, but you do you really need to anymore? Like with technology, you can sort of see what everyone's doing all over the world anyway. So with Instagram and things like that. So I think I think it's an exciting time. I think there's a lot of great raw talent, and a lot of sort of people are opening really small restaurants and really small wine bars and venues, and it's sort of interesting. You got the sort of the groups doing things, and then you've got the smaller guys doing things as well. So it is. I think now is going to be a really interesting time, but yeah, I think we're in a good position for sure.
You've made an amazing impact and a real success with numerous restaurants. What's the best business advice you can give to young professionals looking to start their first restaurant?
Ooh. I don't know. I guess, look, I think that for me and Brent was, work hard and, try not to have, too much of an ego. But basically, back in the day, we just worked really hard. We were the hardest working people in sort of the restaurants, and lead by example, and try and have an idea of what's happening with the accounting side of the business and the cash flow, and you've got to be across everything. You can't just be a chef who's just across food. You can't be a sommelier who just knows about wine. I like the business part of the business part of the business is something that always intrigued me, in numbers and all those little bits and pieces. That was something that I was always keen on. So that was something that I sort of got into, and you've just got to be across really everything. And if you are opening a new restaurant, and I wouldn't expand too quickly. Make sure you get the first one right first, and then if you're lucky enough to be in a position to do more, then go for it. But it's, I think the first restaurant you open is really key. Work hard, listen to people around you, and get good people working for you.
Your role has changed so much over the years as the group has grown. But what is it that you love about what you do?
Oh, it's it's great. We're very 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 lucky. I work basically I'm my own boss, I guess. And you can we go into, we've got 5 beautiful restaurants, beautiful spaces that you go to when you work. We've got a team of great people who are really enthusiastic, who really motivate and inspire us to work hard. They're the main things. It's like the staff are like your family. There's lots of different relationships within the business, and you got friends, and you know what I mean. It's just there's the chitter chatter, and when you're working a service, it's you can be stressful, but everyone's working together as a team. It's really lucky to have 5 beautiful venues and a bunch of great committed people to work with.
You'll be opening the restaurant soon, and hopefully things will start to get back on track after COVID. What are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, just basically, getting back into the restaurants, serving people, having, seeing people again. You know what I mean? Like people I think the first week or so is going to be really quite surreal. Like, I think people are going to be like jumping out of their skin, and feel so sort of lucky, or to be back in a restaurant. I think people will be spending up on wine, and I think there'll be a real fantastic positive energy in the air. So that's I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to seeing all our staff and our regulars, and I think it's going to be fun.
Well, Nick, it's great to hear from you again and have you on the Luminaries on Deep in the Weeds today. Please keep in touch. Good luck, and we'll catch up again soon.
No worries. I'd love to, and looking forward to seeing everyone back in the restaurants. Can't wait.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.